Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Shut Up David series. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to all our new subscribers. We are going gangbusters for some reason. I don't know why, but it's great to see so many of you subscribe and want to hear and read and listen to all the things that we're providing on this channel. So thank you to everybody who's coming on board with that. Our guest today is Ian Collins. Ian is an experienced safety and wellbeing expert with a diverse background. A bit similar to myself, but not too similar. He co-founded two businesses, Safety Coach, bit of competition there, and Wellbeing Daily, that are focused on improving safety and promoting work-life balance, which I think we can all agree on is a very important topic at the moment. As Safety Coach, Ian and his team of specialist consultants work to inspire communications that save lives and minimize harm. Their services include, among other things, human and organizational performance programs, HOP programs, and leadership coaching. So you can see why we have him on the channel now. His skill sets are perfectly aligned with the two areas that I'm interested in for this channel. Ian's own personal journey led him to co-found Wellbeing Daily as a passionate advocate for work-life balance and avoiding burnout. His experiences inspired him to develop tools and strategies to manage stress and improve overall well-being, which he now shares on his Wellbeing Daily platform, which we will no doubt look at later on. We've got his internet sites up and ready to show you as well. As well as managing his own businesses, Ian is also a senior consultant with Fisher Improvement Technologies and Equilibria, delivering HOP deployment and integration projects around the world. I really need to get my false teeth put in so that I can get through these things in one piece. But without much ado, let's bring Ian to the stage and say hello. Hey, Ian, how you going?
Well, thanks, David. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the
no
intro.
worries. Thank you very much for reaching out on LinkedIn. I think people can tell straight away from listening to your intro, your areas of expertise perfectly align with what we're talking about here on this channel, relation to New View, HOP, and also you've got the coaching in there, but also more than that, and I've got an interesting character coming on in a few weeks' time as well. More than that, you've got this psychological well-being programs as well that cater for what so many people these days are going through, which is burnout, which is just spending far too much time invested more in their work than actually in themselves. But we'll get to that. There's just a lot there to go through. But can you do me a favor? Can you give the readers and listeners a bit of an overview as to who you are, your background, and how you got to such a eclectic and diverse business portfolio?
Absolutely. So born and bred in Western Australia and was at university, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I ended up studying business, went out from there. And I think that a key pivotal moment for me was when I was floundering a little bit at university. My dad noticed that and sent me off to an Anthony Robbins seminar. And that was my first foray into the world of personal development. Walked across fire, had a real profound impact on me. And I think the biggest thing I got in touch with is that I love coaching. I love making a difference. I'm happiest in life when I'm making a difference to other people. It's just part of my personality. So left there or went out and joined a very large training and development organization. But wasn't making a lot of money. So Western Australia at the time was going through a big resource boom, and I thought I'd join the mines, make a bit of money just to set myself up. And I got a start as a driller's offsider on a diamond drilling rig. And I think it probably took me a week to figure out that we weren't actually drilling for diamonds, but it was a reference to the drill bit. That's how sort of clueless I was getting into that industry. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I loved it.
And just a heads up as well, I know a fair few drillers and offsiders as well, and it is one of the toughest gigs on an exploration site as well. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You've got the biggest, baddest, most dangerous tools, long days, heavy equipment. Not an easy job you got into there, mate.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, and it was very much the Wild West at that time as well. Some pretty loose behaviours, yeah, and like you say, out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, sort of 3 hours from the nearest civilization. Uh, yeah, I really enjoyed it. You know, I was young and fit and really got into the lifestyle, but had a couple of pretty big events took place. One where a driller almost dropped a piece of drill pipe on my head, and when we wrote up, or when he wrote up the report of what happened, and I got asked to sign it the next morning, and I just said, I can't sign this. This isn't what happened. And he purely put the blame on me somehow. And so I
Wow.
refused to sign it. And so what do? They run me off, and they fired me. And that was a real eye opener in terms of how things were getting done out there. But eventually, kept going in that industry and became a driller, and was drilling for different minerals. Had a few very, very close calls, but was working too much. Was sort of working 4 or 5 weeks away, not having a lot of time off. And I'd heard about offshore drilling, and I liked the appeal of equal time. So I got to start on an offshore drilling rig as a roustabout and work my way up to the drill floor. And we're actually up in the shipyards in Singapore getting a rig ready to come down into Australia when I witnessed, I didn't see the fatality, but I saw the aftermath of a fatality. And one of the migrant workers there had fallen off scaffolding and plummeted to his death. And I think the thing that shocked me the most about that whole experience was, I saw the ambulance come in, pick the guy up, and then a whistle blew, and everyone just got back to work like nothing had happened. And
Oh, right.
and when I sort of was sharing about this in the crib room, rather than my colleagues really demonstrate much shock at this, everyone just started recounting their own stories of death in the industry, and I was just thinking, what have I got myself into here, where fatality is almost accepted?
Yeah.
And so I made a decision there. I didn't really see a future as a driller personally, but I did see, I wanted to, just the thought of that person being the sole provider for his family, not being able to provide anymore, just impacted me heavily. So I went off and did all my safety qualifications. At the same time, was doing a lot of coaching qualifications, and eventually got to start as an offshore safety advisor on drilling rigs, and did that for a number of years. I was doing that. Our rig wasn't performing particularly well, so they engaged the services of this company, Equilibria, a coaching company. And I met a guy called Lewis Senior, and he and another coach came out to the rig. And I've never witnessed a cultural transformation like I did on that drilling rig. Just seeing the impact of these coaching tools. And for me, it was these two worlds of coaching and making a difference, and safety sort of, high risk operations come together. And it just became clear that's exactly what I want to do. So
they fit together so well, don't they?
They do, yeah.
They just, yeah. And when I first found out about them, I had the same kind of feeling and thought as well, as like, wow, these two should go hand in hand. Anyway,
really,
sorry to interrupt.
And they do, yeah. And so, started sort of, I set up my own consultancy. So these two worlds, safety and coaching, came together. I bought the domain safetycoach.com and set up my own consultancy, and at the same time started doing some consulting work for Equilibria, and just started getting farmed out all over the world. Was apparently pretty good at what I did, so was getting projects down in Australia and in South Africa and up in the North Sea, freezing my butt off up there, and Thailand, all over the place. But it was in 2014, we were working on a project, and I got introduced to the world of human and organizational performance. And that was sort of the missing piece of the puzzle for me. Because I'd always believe, no one was coming to work to get hurt. I was very clear about that, yet people were still getting hurt or damaging things. And this was the first time it gave me a framework for how and why people were making mistakes, and that it was largely systemically driven, whereas before we were always focused on the behaviors. And it's such a limiting perspective if you don't understand, well, what drove the behavior to begin with. And so that was just an eye opener for me, and started to do some work in that space with Rob Fisher and Fisher Improvement Technologies. Again, got pretty good at that, and was traveling so relentlessly, and to a point. At one point, I was a gold frequent flyer on 5 different airlines at the same time. It was just an obscene. I was traveling more than pilots. It was ridiculous, and I loved it, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah, right. Okay. And that cost, if we can pick up that in a little bit, I want to touch a little bit first, if we can, on the first part of your career and life journey there. And the first thing that comes to mind is what really hit me is when you said you had this fatality on the rig, the ambulance. I suppose it flew in. It was a helicopter.
No, we're in the shipyard, so it
Oh, shipyards. Drove in, picked him up, the blue whistle, and then everybody got on with their. And that took me straight back to. I used to work in the city centre of Manchester back in the UK, and one morning walking into the office on Oxford Road in Manchester, and the street directly at the side of my offices was cordoned off by police and all that kind of jazz. There was a multi-story car park right next to it. I think you can tell where I'm going with this now. And I kind of peeked around the corner, and there was a body in the middle of the side street with a tarp over him. But bizarrely enough, I mean, you wouldn't have thought it. It was a translucent tarp. I could see the man's face. I could see, I could see, the pool of blood on the road and all that kind of stuff. And it took me about 30 seconds or a minute to actually walk away, to actually stop staring and walk away. And even when I got up to the 3rd floor offices where we worked, I went to the window and I wasn't upset. This wasn't me kind of looking at this body crying and all that kind of stuff. But it was the first time I'd seen someone recently dead. And it had a huge impact on that entire week, maybe even the entire month. It didn't make me sad, like I said, but it affected me. And when you said, they blew the whistle and expected everyone to get back to their daily routines of, doing whatever job that was, how could anybody really go back and perform a peak performance after, it might have been their friend, it might have been their work colleague, might have been someone they knew, even someone they, passed in the hallways. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, it is crazy that we just expect people to sort of get back into whatever they were doing. Like you say, that was a colleague of theirs, and without necessarily doing anything, leaving those same vulnerabilities out there that set that person up for whatever action they took that led to their fatality, for one. Not to mention whatever's going on in their head that's going to impact their performance. So it was shocking to me, and anyone like you that has had this similar experience is going to stay with you for the rest of your life.
Definitely will do. So then you got exposed to safety coaching first, which was opposite to me, but you got exposed to the coaching element first. And what sort of framework were you trained in? What sort of I'm assuming it was grow model type of training. Was that right, or was it a different framework you were using?
So the coaching qualifications were very much in that life coaching space. I think one of your previous guests was mentioning similar, the coaching world.
Alexandra,
yeah, that's it. And so grow model, all of those, the wheel of life, and it was then I started to take some of those concepts and apply it to what I was doing out on the rigs. And we got trained in things, it was very much behavior-based safety, what I was doing in the safety world and the 5 whys. And what was interesting is when I got introduced to human and organizational performance, rather than learn, I did more unlearning. And I had to unlearn all of the sort of the models and frameworks that had been using up until that point to really, understand what was driving the behavior, because the questions asking someone in the aftermath of an incident why 5 times is not going to get you the information that's really going to help you understand what drove the event to begin with. Why is it great later on when we're doing our causal analysis, but as a first question, they're a terrible first question.
They are, aren't they? And it's like, well, we'll keep on asking them because they're going to lie to us at the beginning anyway, and they're not going to tell us everything. And there's complete mistrust. I feel there's complete mistrust within that. It's like, keep on asking why, because eventually they'll give you the solution and the real answer. It's like, okay, well, that's just it's not setting people up for success, really. So let's be honest. How did you hear about HOP? And through which channel did you hear about it first?
So Equilibria had a project with one of the oil majors in California, and in one half of the business unit they had engaged Equilibria. In the other half of the business unit, they'd engaged Fisher Improvement Technologies and Rob Fisher and rolling out HOP. And a new lady took over the business unit and said, well, why have we got 2 consulting companies? Let's get them together and see who sort of comes out. And what was really interesting, because Equilibria specialize in understanding how different people can get hurt based on their personality, which is a fascinating sort of world. And it actually becomes very predictable if you know someone's personality, how they're going to get hurt. And in the world of human and organizational performance, it's all about understanding how this person is impacted by other people, other programs, other processes, the work environment, the organization, and in the equipment. But they considered that that person in the middle of that system to react and respond the same way. And the reality is they're not. They're going to react and respond very much through their lens of personality. So the 2 companies actually came together and developed what they now call advanced error reduction in organizations, which is all about how different people, different personalities see and manage risk differently based on their personality. So there's a partnership there, and I do consulting work for both organizations as well as everything I'm doing on my own.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
A little bit more about that Equilibria personality. Are we talking? So we're talking risk appetite. We're talking loss aversion. We're talking empathy. Is that one of the dimensions as well?
Oh, definitely. So yeah, they developed their core tool is known as the E-colors, and very simple 4-quadrant theory, very similar to DISC and a few of the others. But where I really love them is in their practical application, because they started asking those questions. Well, David, how do you get hurt? How would you typically get hurt in the workplace? And if I know, and they started asking that to hundreds of thousands of people, and guess what? It starts to get very predictable. It's very predictable. You can have 2 people take home the same piece of IKEA furniture of different personality types. One of them's going to rip into the box and just start putting it together and finish in a record time and maybe have a shelf and 2 bolts left over, whereas the other one's going to very methodically lay it out, follow it step by step. And if we know someone's personality, then and we can predict that. If you can predict something, you can manage it. And so they bring this whole practical application of personality tendencies, not just to risk, but to how we communicate, our tendency to follow procedures or not, all of these different areas. I just love what that opens up in terms of dialogue with people. Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's the first time I've really heard about that type. So obviously heard of DISC and 360 and all that kind of stuff, but it's the first time I've heard of that. I'd be interested to learn a bit more about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Do we have is that on one of your websites?
It's on the Safety Coach website, yeah.
Safety Coach website. Let's have a quick look for people who are listening and they want to pause, because I would, if I was listening, I'd want to pause and go and have a look. Let me pull up this page so we can share screen. Yes, please. So we should be now looking at the Safety Coach website. This is your website.
So in services, you should find
services,
personality diversity.
Personality diversity. There we go. E-colors personality diversity indicator. Here we go. Applications of personality diversity. So these are some of the main quadrants that you assess people on.
Well, they're the main areas of application. And so anyone can go online. There should be a link there where people can discover their e-colors. Very easy, 10 to 15 minutes. And they're the different areas. If you click that button, yeah.
I will do later. I'll do mine later on. I'll message it to you so you know what mine is. Yeah. This is awesome. And you got some videos there explaining it as well. Okay, cool. Well, if like myself, this has intrigued you and you want to know more about it, the website is safetycoach.com. Safetycoach.com. And I have heard of this company well before I even heard of Ian, because when I was looking for a name for my business, and I thought I'd search on domains first to make sure I can get my domains, this was taken. Now I know why, and I now know the person behind it. So hence why mine was called called New View Safety Coach. But there we go. So thank you very much. Thank you for that, Ian.
It's amazing how many requests I get almost on a weekly basis to purchase a domain. So really happy I got in there when I did. Yeah,
I bet you are. I bet you are. Awesome. So, okay. So Fisher Technologies, Rob Fisher, Equilibria, and then they've got this merging of this service, which looks at the personality types of people to give a predictability on the type of harm they might cause to themselves. And you also have the fundamentals of the safety principles in HOP. And then almost kind of surrounding all of that, you have this coaching element, which is the one-on-one with the individuals. Did you focus more on the field leaders or on the board members, directors, senior managers within the organization? What was your area?
Typically, we start with the top. So we're always going to start with senior leadership because, like I'm sure you've experienced, if there's no buy-in there or drive from the senior leaders, it's going to be a challenge to really get anything going, get any momentum, because you can take anyone through. The whole workforce can understand blame fixes nothing, and as soon as you have an incident occur, if they get blamed, everything just goes out the window. Trust goes out the window. So typically start at the top and work, sort of work our way down with an organization.
And where do you find the biggest push or the biggest obstacles? Because my experience is the frontline leaders, they lap it up. It's second nature to them. This is how they see the world. Whereas generally, in my experience anyway, the higher you go, the more cognitive dissonance you come into contact with. Is that fair? Is that similar with your world as well?
Yeah, it is similar. Once they see the value, then as long as they can see, what I've found is as long as senior leaders can see a return on investment, and when we're talking about human error can impact safety, but it has a massive impact on quality, on productivity, on rework. And we've worked with organizations that have had $10, $20 million savings in waste. Just from applying some of these concepts and tools, and that's hard catch right there. So as long as they can see the buy-in and that return, the value and the return on investment, I find with the big organizations, there's this, we call it the frozen middle. And we do a lot of work with the senior leaders and a lot of work with the workforce. And then there's this sort of middle management that typically get not necessarily missed, but I don't think they're sometimes given the best tools, resources to really and understand their role in really driving, let's say, a HOP deployment. So we tend to focus there because we know from experience that can be a roadblock as well.
Yeah, and it's an interesting concept, isn't it? That frozen middle. I've heard it several times over the past, even over the past few months, from different guests that I've been speaking to as well. And the theory, ideas around why they call potentially the frozen middle, and it's not necessarily a pejorative term. I think it describes more the pressures that they're under and the expectations that are placed on them, both from above and from below as well. They're the people who are getting their arms pulled by the execs and their legs pulled by the frontline leaders, and they really don't know which direction to turn in, because they're just being pulled apart, and it's got to be difficult. And they don't want to be seen to go into the senior leaders with anything too far advanced from the norm, because then they'll be sticking their head above the parapet. And there's all these different dynamics that are in play in that middle section, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think you sort of articulated that really well. Just the challenges that role tends to have.
Yeah, Roger. All right. So this might be a good time actually to have a look at where we sort of left off, put a bit of a bookmark in last time. So your life up into that stage, from memory, you've got gold level air miles with 5 different airlines. You're flying all over the world. You're putting in, I would imagine, crazy hours, enjoying what you're doing, but really, really burning the candle at both ends. And then what?
Yeah, then it all came to a head. And I think I calculated it one year that I'd spent about a month of the year actually in a plane. I mean, it's a lot of time to be spent and waking up and not knowing even what country I was in, sort of taking a minute, just where am I? And when you're away that much, you're obviously not at home. And so I had a wife at the time at home, and after a number of years of that lifestyle, unfortunately, that relationship came to an end. And I had a period of, rather than really grieving that, I sort of dove harder into work and just worked more and more and more. And it all came to a head. I actually took a vacation, and I was in Italy and was meant to get on a boat to go sail around the Mediterranean for a week, just to absolutely relax. And my body just started shaking, and I couldn't even get on the boat. And I called my sister in London. I said, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm flying over there. So I flew to London, and I actually took myself to the hospital, and they checked me out and said, well, there's nothing physically wrong with you. What's going on in your life? And I said, well, just going through a separation and sort of living out of a suitcase. And I was in America last week and Nigeria the week before, and blah, 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 blah. And they just said, you are burnt out. And
cooked inside out.
And it was such a surreal experience, just to, burnout. It's a lot, some people have experienced what it was like. For me, it was just, like I said, my body just started just absolutely shaking, and it just said to me, you can't keep doing this. So I thought, okay, well, I need to sort out some pretty fundamentals of, like, okay, where am I going to live? Let's start there. And I thought, okay, well, I love what I do. I love the difference it makes in the world. I'd love to be able to keep doing that, but I want to do it sustainably. And so I thought, well, I'd lived all over the world up until this point. I think it was about 9 cities across 5 continents. And I thought, well, I want to be somewhere where that's, I at least find nurturing. And for me, that was Bali. Had my best mate living there. And so I moved to Bali. And I just, and Bali's, it's a magical place. Absolutely crazily packed with people right now, but that's another thing. But at the time I was there, I went there and just started looking at every single well-being practice that I could find. And there's some weird and wonderful ones there, but really, got into things like meditation and breath work and ice baths and just anything I could get hold of, just to see what actually worked for me.
Yep.
And that really had a really great impact on me, physically, emotionally, mentally. I was in a really healthy sort of space. And then the pandemic hit. And so I will say Bali was probably the best place in the world to get stuck during the pandemic. It was just absolutely magical. But it had an impact on work, because all of my work up until that point was client facing. So we couldn't travel. And it was great in one sense, that it was a forced break. All of a sudden, And I remember after about 3 months of being at home, I just had this overwhelming sense of calm. And I thought, oh, this is what I'm meant to be feeling like. Not the constant stress response sort of state that I've been operating in. But we had to change. We had to adapt our business model. So we started. It's not like the operations on a lot of these projects stopped. So we still wanted to provide support, and so I just started doing a lot more one-on-one coaching, particularly with leaders in various companies, and still coaching them around HOP and intentional leadership. And after about let's say about a year of that, every single one of the people I was working with, when I'd ask them, where do you actually need the most support right now? Every single one of them said, either I'm about to burn out or my people are about to burn out. Have you got anything that can really help me? Because all the companies, some companies were doing what they could, and they might give them access to the Calm meditation app or Headspace or something like that. But if you haven't built that habit of meditating, then that app becomes almost redundant. It's a nice gesture, but that's not really what's going to make the biggest impact. So again, I just started coaching people around things that I'd been doing, and these, similar to me, these were people, they'd love to meditate for half an hour before work every morning. None of them had the time to do that. So what could we do in 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes that's going to have a similar impact, but it'd be a lot more time efficient. And eventually, I started with sleep, because if we're not sleeping well, then it impacts everything else. And the feedback.
Couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah.
I even wear this Oura ring.
Yeah.
To monitor my sleep so I can keep track, because I know if my sleep's off by 10-15% either way, I'm just not the same person.
Exactly. And for me, I'd gotten so interested in sleep because I was chopping and changing time zones all the time. So I thought, I can't, again, that's not a sustainable life. So I got really interested in tips, tricks, hacks that could really help me adjust to wherever I was and give myself the best chance of quality sleep. So I just started coaching people on that. And every one of them was like, this is great. Have you got more? And eventually I said, you know what, if I can build a framework that really looks at well-being holistically, and really design it for people who are busy, because we are busy in life. But I think there's a real gap in the market. And like I mentioned, it really comes down to, how do you help people build healthy habits and sort of integrate them into their already existing lives. And that's where we really focus. And that's what really led to the development of Wellbeing Daily. What are those little, we call it your daily dose of well-being. What are those little things that you can be doing on a daily basis that are going to compound over time? We're not talking massive, drastic changes to lifestyle. These are things that you can just integrate into your existing life.
Let's have a quick look at this website then as well. So this is Wellbeing Daily, wellbeingdaily.com, all one word. And what can people expect to find on here, Ian?
Yeah, so our sort of core offerings, like it says there, we help enable wellbeing initiatives. So a lot of companies have wellbeing initiatives in place, and I'll give you another example. I was in Houston a little while back, and their head of wellness was so frustrated because you're saying, we've got an on-site gym, but no one is using it. And again, if people haven't developed that motivation, that habit of physical well-being, then they're underutilizing a lot of the wellness resources that companies are offering. So we really help enable a lot of existing initiatives, as well as our core program we call Balanced. You can see in the employee program there is an amazing program that really targets these core pillars of well-being. We developed 7 core pillars of well-being: sleep, physical, mental, work, social, self-care, and life joy well-being. And so we teach people, how do you apply these daily habits into each of these core areas. And something that we developed that I think is absolutely brilliant is a well-being self-assessment. Again, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to do. And what it generates is a report, so people can actually understand how they are doing in each of these core pillars. And a lot of companies will throw a well-being initiative, but if it's not meeting the needs of where people actually need the most support, then it's not gonna have as big an impact. So I love this well-being self-assessment, and it's immediately from the report that it generates, people get some tips and tools that they can put into their life straight away.
I see all of these, Ian, and I think I mentioned this to you at the beginning as well, before we actually came in here to record, when we were just having a catch up. I see all these areas being all in the same ballpark, and especially this as well for the individual, because it's about, I think anyway, it's about the context of the individual. Have they got, and I love how you use habits, because it's only recently within the past couple of years dawned on me, I have my set routines or habits, and when they get interrupted for long enough, sometimes I completely lose a habit. So an example of that would be back end of last year, the last 6 months of last year, I had a pretty rough ride physically with a bloke, 3 broken ribs, pleural effusion. I had a regular heartbeat. I had inflammation of the heart. I had, fractured bones, all this kind of stuff, and it threw out all of my what I consider my well-being habits. So I wasn't meditating anymore. I wasn't stretching. Every morning I religiously dedicate half an hour to doing some yoga stretches to keep myself limber and, to keep myself flexible as I get older. I wasn't doing any of that. I stopped cycling. I was cycling 4 or 5 times a week, a couple of 100 Ks a week sometimes. I didn't do any of that. And coming into this year, I got to be honest with you, I felt terrible. I was drinking too much. I'd lost all of my good habits. And I'm slowly starting to build them back up now that I'm physically getting more able to, but they are habits. I mean, I run a habit when I wake up in the morning. I've got my set routine of what I do: go to the bathroom, come back in, make my bed, start my stretches. And that's a habit routine for me. And it just runs automatically, now. So I like how you do that. And it's the resilience of the individual within life itself. A bit like the resilience of the system of the organization in the context of the world that they run as well. Is that similar to how you see it as well?
Oh, 100%. And I like how you described it. And it's exactly what we talk about in the program. We don't tell people what to do. And I like one of our taglines is, this is for people who can't sit still to meditate, or they don't want to do yoga, or still like a glass of wine in the evening. We're not going to tell people what to do. What we do in the program is we give you the science behind each of these core pillars. And then our first module is all about behavior design and how do you build a habit. And so we, in the morning, I like what you sort of laid out there. I built a habit. Okay, first thing I do when I wake up is I have a glass of water. It's right next to my bed, and that's become a habit. And so when people go through the program, people get different things out of it because their life is different. And I love hearing just the vast variety of outcomes that people get by going through our balanced program. One person started exercising again post-COVID. They'd sort of fallen into a slump. Another person has now this habit of self-care where they take a 10, 15-minute shower at the end of the day when it's just their time. The kids know, their husband knows that that's mum's time, and she's a better person and more productive for it, whereas another person has implemented a whole new morning routine that sets himself up powerfully for the day. So we give it the science and just allow people, help them understand how do you build a habit, or how do you stop a bad habit as well.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Apply it to each of these areas. So it's been a fascinating journey. Just one of the other sort of byproducts when teams go through it together, because it's not necessarily, well-being is very personal. We're going through this program together. The byproduct has been better collaboration, better trust, better engagement with each other during their work time. It just has that sort of impact.
I would imagine as well, and correct me if I'm wrong here, to be more of an appreciation for people's lives and what they're going through as well, when they're sharing their stories of what will and won't work and the reasons behind it, as well as maybe even development of empathy for the people that you're working with as well. Look, I've got a bit of a tangent question, I suppose, because we've covered quite a lot of ground. Everything from seeing people dead, coaching, burnout, and now this different area which is helping individuals recognize what they need in order to be able to flourish in the world, or thriving, if we're to use your scale there. What are Ian Collins' values in life? What are your what are your key values?
Great question. The first one that it comes up for me is integrity. It's my core driver. Integrity is number one. I just value making a difference. I mentioned at the start, it's what gets me up in the morning. There's a guy, Alfred Adler, who was sort of a contemporary of Sigmund Freud, and he's not spoken about enough in terms of the history of psychology, but he's sort of on that same level as Freud, and his psychology is all about the impact that you're going to be happier when you're making an impact in the world, and I 100% agree on that. And so for me, integrity, making a difference, and people first. It's I love helping, supporting people. Where I get into trouble is that I overexert that and don't help myself. So that's been a real eye-opener for me as well, making sure I keep my cup full, so to speak. And I think safety as a value is for me fundamental. It's why I do what I do. And Maslow knew it when he designed his hierarchy of needs. Once we've got our survival needs met, safety is next. Because if we don't feel safe in anything that we're doing, whether we're in the workplace, if we don't feel safe in our intimate relationships, we're not going to bring all of ourselves to that relationship. So for me, safety is the absolute foundation of whether we call it performance or anything else. We're never going to reach those high levels of attainment without having that foundation of safety. So it's why I develop safety coach. It's why I do what I do, because I want to make the world a safer place, ultimately, whatever form that looks like.
So you've got these values that are very personal to you and have shaped everything that you've done. Where do your values lead to in 5 years' time? What does the life of Ian Collins look like in 5 years?
For me, these two worlds of safety and well-being really intersect. And there's a real overlap there. And I'm sure you can agree, if people are fatigued, if they're stressed out, they're going to make more errors, whether it be at work or at home. And so I really want to develop that sort of intersection and really give individuals and organizations more tools that can really help them be a safer organization, which will lead to better performance. Empowering, not only empowering, but enabling people as well to really realize their potential.
Awesome. And So you're in Bali currently. Are your plans to stay in Bali, or are you going to
Well,
be settling
no,
somewhere else?
I'm actually in Portugal right now.
Oh,
So
you're
I'm in Portugal.
taking advantage of all them frequent flyer miles you've got, are you?
Well, we hit a point. Bali changed a lot after the borders reopened, and we wanted a bit of a change. So we've been in Europe for a little while, but funnily enough, and eyeing off a move back to Asia Pacific, we're just not 100% sure where just yet. So I see the real potential. Yeah, there's a lot of potential in Europe, but I think there's even more right now in the Asia Pacific region, and want to be a bit closer to home too. So
Yeah, well, here in Australia, and I'm sure you're more than aware of that, as there is a real push at the moment for management of psychosocial hazards in the workplace,
exactly.
and what that actually means in relation to things like job design and work conditions, and even those. I mean, I did elements of human factors and work design as part of organizational psychology degree, actually at UWA. But even that stops really at the walls of the organization, and doesn't assist individuals outside of the confines of the organization. I can see something like this, the tools to enable people to identify key areas outside. And this is another key reason why I wear the ring, because it helps me identify areas of fatigue if I've not slept well, if I'm not exercising enough. And it tells me, Dave, your activity over the past week has been pretty poor. And it's reflected in your sleep patterns as well. And I know this is only very basic compared to what your program will be able to do, but for me, it's really helped shaped the habits that I developed. Like every morning now, I go and sit in the pool for 10, 15 minutes. It's not an ice bath, but it's bloody cold, especially autumn and winter. But it really invigorates me for the day. It really gets me, and I've noticed my joints feel so much better. I can exercise more after doing it, and after I went on a 50k cycle ride earlier on today. If I don't get in the pool afterwards, cold water, my joints and stuff will be sore, but they're not if I get in the cold water. So all these little habits, and that's nothing to do with work design. That's nothing to do with organizational constricture around, and resourcing and job resourcing and all those things. It's personal. And that's where I see this really sitting side by side in a complementary way to what the organization is doing. Okay, well, let's help the individuals as well in their own time. That's where I see it doing. So, and that's why I'm really interested in this area as well. And thank you very much for explaining all this. There's a gentleman here in Perth. I don't know whether you know of him, Alistair Milne. He's from Scotland, back in the UK, and he had a very similar experience to yourself, and he's dedicating his life to training and helping organizations and individuals with assessment of their life and assessment of the work environment in order to be able to help trying to control and mitigate some of these hazards and pressures that individuals have been placed under. I'd like to reach out to him and introduce you to him, if you like, just so you've got a point of contact. He's doing some really great work here in Perth, and he's associated with the Australian Institute of Management. He does courses there for them as well, and he's a really great guy. So I'll put you in contact after this. But it's been fascinating, Ian. It really has been. It's been awesome. Thank you again for reaching out on LinkedIn and asking if you can come and share your story. I'm really glad you did, and I'd really like to, if you're up for it, have you come on, because we did a bit of an overview there, really, didn't we, as to your life and your experiences within your life. But I'd really like to have you come back, if you would, and talk about some of the specifics around, maybe around some of the programs that you developed that help individuals, and then for organizations that are interested in that, and especially some of that behavioral assessment as well, if you're interested and want to talk about that, because I can see that being a potential value for people in organizations. What's your I was going to say, what's your plan now? But I mean, you're in Portugal at the moment, aren't you? So you're all over the world. But is that something you'd like to do? Is come back on?
I'd love to come back on, yeah, and yeah, anything that I can be doing and sharing that can help people not have to go through that same experience of burnout that I went through, and really help people manage stress and their stress response even better. I'm all for. More than willing, more than happy to come back on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
No, that's awesome. And I know it's amazing. You know, you talked to Ali as well, Alistair, and that's his prime motivator as well, to stop, to give people the tools so that they don't have to go through what he went through.
Exactly.
And that's a huge motivator. And thank you so much again for your time. I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to getting you on again next time. If you can hang around when I stop the recording, just so that we can catch up afterwards, because sometimes people leave and it's like, oh, I wanted to catch up with you, but I'll just say goodbye to everybody, and I'll be right there with you, mate. So thank you, everybody, for let me just move. Oh, still getting used to this technology. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for listening on Spotify, and for watching on YouTube. Thank you again to all the subscribers. It's very much appreciated. And we're going to keep on bringing you great people to share their stories and their insights and their learnings through their different careers and through the different paths that life has taken them. And hopefully it's of interest to some of you out there, and you take something from it, because we're trying to bring some value. But thank you again, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you at the next episode.